Welcome to Beneath the Bible, who are helping you dig deeper and uncover the world beneath the sacred book. Humankind's relationship to animals goes back as far as the human species itself, and it's still a big part of our modern world. And we tend to associate animals with particular traits. Dogs are loyal, cats are independent and aloof, foxes are sly, owls are wise, and donkeys are stubborn. Here in the United States, the bald eagle is a symbol of our country. We tend to think of these associations as universal, but in fact, they are all culturally bound. The things we associate with certain animals in our cultural world may not be the same as in other cultures. For example, in cultures which practice Hinduism, the cow is revered as sacred, but not so much in the West. When we look at associations around particular animals, we can see differences across cultures today, so we shouldn't be surprised that the same is true when we look at past cultures. Ancient cultures had different attitudes about animals as well, and that's what we're looking at in this series on animal imagery. Today, we're going to look at some perceptions of lions in the ancient Near East. Now, there is a lot of lion imagery to cover from the ancient world, so this is going to be a two-part video. And even then, we'll only cover kind of a high-level view of how ancient people viewed lions. Be sure to subscribe so you'll know when part 2 drops next week. Now, in these two videos, we'll look at a few things. We'll look at lions as threats, lions as guardians, lions as kings, and lions and divine imagery. Finally, we'll look at some ways that lion imagery was used in ancient Israel. We'll talk about biblical lion imagery along the way as it's relevant, but most of that's going to come at the end. Now, let's dig into today's exploration of lion imagery in the Bible and the ancient Near East. Today, we tend to think of lions as an African animal, but in antiquity, lions also roamed the Middle East until at least the medieval period. The last known wild lion in Israel was killed in the 12th century, though they may have continued to live there well past that time. Now, because of this, it's not surprising to see lions mentioned frequently in the Bible, as they were an animal that ancient Near Eastern people would have known and encountered. During the biblical period in Israel, lions seem to have been most populous in the Jordan Valley, but they ranged widely beyond that area as well. When we look at lion imagery in the ancient world, we find some shared associations with our cultural view of them today. But ancient peoples also saw lions quite differently. For example, in Mesopotamia, lions were considered part of the dog family, not part of the cat family where we classify them today. Wolves, dogs, lions, and hyenas are grouped together in some ancient texts. Ancient people even had different terminology for lions, some of which we don't fully understand today. In fact, the Hebrew Bible has 11 different words for lion. In English, we only have maybe 3, lion, lioness, and lion cub. Now, while we know that the Hebrew Bible has many words for lion, we don't know why they had so many words and what the different shades of meaning are for these words. Are they referring to different kinds of lions, what we might call subspecies? Do these words make distinctions between things like individual lions versus a group, or developmental stages like young and old lions, or male and female, or some combination of those? Do they represent different regional names for the same animal, the way that mountain lion, cougar, and puma are all the same animal? Now, even with all the historical sources available to us, we still don't have definitive answers to these questions. It's not entirely clear what all these terms mean, but what we do know is that the ancient Israelites were very familiar with lions, as were their neighbors. When we discuss their cultural associations with lions, we can trust that they knew what they were talking about, as they had ample opportunity to encounter lions, and they had a wide array of language available to describe them and their meanings. Now, before we dive in, we want to note that lions were widely revered in the ancient Near East, and in all ancient cultures, they were associated with certain things. We can say that lions as metaphor are both ubiquitous and polyvalent. Today we're going to look at a few of the most commonly held cultural associations with lions, and how they pertain to ancient Israel's perspectives on lions. We're going to focus on naturalistic depictions of lions and not hybrid lion creatures like the famous Sphinx in Egypt or the less famous Mesopotamian Ugalu demon. We also want to note that we're only going to look at 1 or 2 examples for each of the elements that we talk about. This is in no way meant to be exhaustive. Much of what we're looking at has been discussed by the scholar Brent Strawn, who teaches at my alma mater, Duke Divinity School. So, if you want to learn more, you can look up his work. We'll cite it in the description below.
Seeing lions as a threat may be the most natural association with lions, one that we still have today. Even at the zoo, when you see lions from a safe distance, it's easy to see how they would be understood as dangerous and threatening creatures. Their reputation as hunters, whose unmatched strength puts them at the top of the food chain, is easy to understand. It's no surprise then that the association of lions with danger is behind some of the oldest ways lions are understood in art and literature. In fact, this threatening, dangerous creature, as well as its victories as a hunter, underlies all of the other metaphors and associations we see around lions. In the ancient world, lions, along with wild bulls, were widely seen as apex animals. Nothing matched them for strength and ferocity. From early artistic traditions, lions are shown as symbols of strength, ferocity, and danger, often shown as fierce creatures attacking both animals and people. Particularly in the earliest depictions, but often in later ones, we don't usually see lions being attacked. They're most often depicted as the aggressors. We could highlight any number of examples that show lions as a threat, but we'll just show a few here. On these seals, we see lions in a striding pose with their mouths open, ready to either roar or bite. This fragmentary head of a lion, which originally would have been an ornamental furniture element, clearly shows the ferocity of the lion in quite a lifelike way. We also see lions attacking human figures, like in this plaque-carved relief. The attacking lion is naturally seen as a threat to other wildlife, livestock, and humans themselves. This association led to the rise of a kind of contest scene between lions and a human figure. This contest scene is sometimes called the Master of Animals, or somewhat incorrectly, the Gilgamesh pose. This is an old but consistent scene we see depicted in the ancient Near East, spanning millennia. We see it here on the Gibel al-Arak knife, which was found in Egypt and dates to the 4th millennium BC, all the way through to the Persian period in the 4th century BC. It typically shows a humanoid figure grasping or holding two creatures, often lions, as a way to show mastery over them. This figure is often human, but shows superhuman or semi-divine characteristics like superhuman strength. This pose then shows the human figure, the hero, as having mastery over these animals and what they symbolize. This mastery of the lion, the fiercest and strongest of animals, serves to show how strong and great the hero figure is. This imagery even appears in the Bible in places like Judges 14, where Samson uses his supernatural strength to kill a lion with his bare hands. Because of the lion's natural characteristics, it was seen as the quintessential threat. As a threat to the natural world, wild animals, domesticated animals, even people, the lion became a stand-in for cosmic threats too. Not only were lions threatening, but they occupied liminal spaces, areas outside of human habitation where humans were out of their element. They lived out in the wilderness, in the mountains, and in the desert. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, the hero goes to find the secret of immortality in a liminal space at the edge of the world. To get there, he must cross the wilderness and mountain passes, and he finds the mountains infested with lions. This is a common theme that lions are found at the so-called ends of the earth, where all kinds of unknown terrors lie. In this Egyptian papyrus, called Papyrus Ani, we see lions holding the sky on their backs. This may be the Egyptian god Ruti or Akar. This god, portrayed as two lions, represents the horizon or the mountains of the horizon where the sun rose and set. The two lions are named yesterday and tomorrow. And we can consider this a kind of cosmological map, showing the lions as stand-ins for the mountains at the edge of the world which hold up the sky, with the red sun below the sky. The lions are symbolically equivalent for the ends of the earth, a notoriously dangerous place. Lions then are the fiercest and most dangerous of all the animals. They were associated with strength and danger, and they threatened man and beast alike. They occupied uncivilized areas with other cosmic threats. They came to be generally associated with the attributes of strength, ferocity, and threat. It is on the basis of these associations that we see other Leonine associations built. While these attributes made lions uncontrollable threats, they also led to lions being associated with guarding people and places from danger.
One place where lions are commonly depicted is near doorways, gates, and entrances. This is in part because lions were understood to be excellent guards. There was a commonly held understanding in the ancient world that as the supreme animals in the natural world, lions slept awake. They were never fully asleep, so they made quintessential guardians, particularly around sensitive places like city gates, temples, and palaces. Elite places deserved elite guards, so lions enshrined in stone were the obvious choice. We see this in Egypt, like in this recumbent lion statue from the Old Kingdom. This dates to the 3rd millennium BC. It's roughly contemporary with the pyramids of Giza. The lion is laying down, but alert. It would likely have stood at the entrance of a temple complex, symbolically guarding the entrance from any threat that may come. This is one of the proto-lions, a pair of granite lion statues which date to the New Kingdom period in Egypt, or during the Late Bronze Age around 1370 BC. A pair of these lions originally sat at the entrance of a temple in Nubia. Later pharaohs moved them to different temples farther north in Egypt, and in the 19th century they were excavated and taken to England. This later example, which is also from Egypt, dates to the Ptolemaic period. It's more naturalistic and lifelike. Now, it too would have been positioned flanking the entrance of a temple to guard it and to ward off threats. Placing lions as guardians of entrances is not just an Egyptian practice. In Mesopotamia, we see lions as guardians as well. This gigantic relief of a roaring lion originally stood at the entrance of the temple of Ishtar. As with the other examples, it was intended to guard the entrance and ward off any threat that may have come to the temple. These basalt examples come not from Mesopotamia, but from the site of Hazor in modern-day Israel. They date to the Late Bronze Age, between the 15th and 13th centuries, and they're what are called orthostats. They were found at the entrance of a temple. These lions would have greeted anyone approaching the entrance of this Canaanite temple, and as with the lions from other cultures, they were likely intended to ward off threats to the temple itself. These guardian lions are not only found at temples, though. This example is from the Ishtar Gate in Babylon, which led to the inner part of the city of Babylon along a processional street. It's composed of colored bricks which, in this case, show a lion. The Ishtar Gate had numerous depictions of animals and hybrid creatures, but as lions were both quintessential guardians and the attribute animal of Ishtar, lions were a natural feature of the Ishtar Gate. There are many other places where we see lions appear near or on gates throughout the ancient Near East. While there may be many reasons for this, one notable reason is because of cultural associations around lions as guardians. Their strength and ferocity made them ideal guardian figures, and that power led to another important association between lions and kings.
From very early times, lions have been associated with kings. This is true not only in the ancient Near East, but in many times and places throughout history, down to the present day. In the ancient Near East, royal Leonine associations can fall into two broad trends. The first is lions as threats to be defeated or controlled by the king, thus the king demonstrates his power and authority by overcoming all that the lion symbolizes, the power, ferocity, strength, and association with the uncontrolled spaces that we've already discussed. The second is the lion as the king. Here the king is substituted for the lion, and all the characteristics and associations of lions are imputed on the king. First, we'll look at kings overcoming lions. Again, this is only a fraction of all of the examples of this imagery, so we'll limit ourselves to the idea of the lion hunt. The lion hunt is a very old and common motif we see in royal imagery throughout the ancient Near East, and it depicts the king demonstrating his power over the lion. This is a clear example from Syria, with the king in his chariot over what looks like a subdued lion. Perhaps the best examples of the king on a lion hunt come from Assyria, where numerous kings are depicted in various stages of the lion hunt. Along with the depictions are inscriptions, which, while they vary somewhat from king to king, contain stock language and indicate the lion hunt was a highly ritualized and even religious event. There's even a depiction of an Assyrian king offering a libation to a goddess over the carcasses of lions. While lions were associated with the wilderness, lion hunts did not necessarily happen out in the wilderness. We see this in this panel, where some poor soul is on top of a cage letting a lion out so it can be shot by the king. This fragmentary panel shows something similar. Other scenes show the various stages of the lion hunt. This one shows the king in his chariot with a lion attacking from behind while his horse leaps over a dead lion. This scene shows another king in his chariot with a spear instead of a bow attacking a lion behind him. Another king does the same thing here. This one shows the king shooting his bow forward while attendants spear lions behind the chariot. In all these scenes, the lions are shown naturalistically and in excellent detail. The lions in their death throes are particularly poignant. So what's the point of these lion hunts? For the Assyrians, they demonstrated the king's mastery over these animals and everything they stood for. These reliefs demonstrate the king's power and skill as a warrior. If the king can kill this many lions, who can stand against him? In Near Eastern art and literature, there is often a conflation of hunting with war, so the king on the hunt against lions is symbolic of the king's capability to win in war against even the strongest of foes. The association of lions with rulers is also found in ancient Egypt. The Middle Kingdom pharaoh Amenemhet I, who reigned around the beginning of the 20th century BC, wrote of his reign this way: "None hungered in my years, none thirsted in them. One sat because I acted and spoke of me. I had assigned everything to its place. I subdued lions, I captured crocodiles, I repressed those of Wawat, I captured the Magi, I made the Asiatics do the dog walk." This passage is about the pharaoh bringing order to chaotic forces threatening the kingdom. The lion and the crocodile are literally equivalent to the Wawat, Magi, and Asiatics, people groups who oppose the Egyptians. The pharaoh overcoming the lion is the same as him overcoming Egypt's enemies in battle. Beyond Egypt, we see this artifact from Iran, which seems to show a king in combat against a lion, similar to the Master of Animals motif we discussed earlier. Finally, while not an artistic depiction, David's assertion that he has fought and killed lions in 1 Samuel 17 after his anointing, but before becoming king of Israel, seems to follow in this tradition of kings proving their worthiness by slaying lions. He follows this assertion by slaying Goliath, marking the beginning of his long and successful military career. More on that next time. The second association with lions and kings is the substitution of the king for a lion. This again is a very old custom. On the battlefield palette, which dates to around 3100 BC, we see a lion attacking a man, with men bound above and dead men beneath. This is one of the earliest depictions of combat from ancient Egypt, and the lion has widely been interpreted as the pharaoh. Here, the pharaoh, shown as a lion, is defeating his enemies. Whether the lion here ought to be interpreted as a pharaoh or not can be debated, but it is clear that the pharaohs tried to associate themselves with lions. Seti I described himself as a fierce-eyed lion in official inscriptions. His son Ramses II described himself as the strong lion with raised talons and mighty roar, at whose voice the desert animals tremble. He even kept lions as pets. They were presumably taken as cubs and tamed and raised in the palace. Ramses II was very proud of his lions. He named his favorite lion Slayer of his enemies. In the depictions of Ramses II going to fight the Hittite Empire at the Battle of Kadesh, his pet lions can be seen in the depiction of the Egyptian camp. On reliefs of the battle, the king's chariot has a lion on it. And on still another relief, the pharaoh is actually accompanied into battle by his lion. Now, this seems a bit far-fetched for the pharaoh to have a pet lion both tame enough to live in his palace and ferocious enough to follow the pharaoh into battle and fight only the pharaoh's enemies. We should rightly be skeptical of whether this depicts reality, but it does demonstrate the pharaoh drawing a link between himself in battle and a lion. In essence, the pharaoh fought like a lion. That's what he's trying to communicate. The ferocity of the pharaoh in battle is again pretty clear in this little artifact. It shows a lion sitting with an individual in his paws, and the figure's head is missing, but it would have been a lion holding someone and devouring them. This would have been attached to part of the stage where the pharaoh sat. The lion here is the pharaoh, and the person being eaten is an enemy of Egypt, in this case a prince of Kush, a kingdom south of Egypt. The throne the pharaoh sat on could have a lion on it as well. This throne from the tomb of King Tutankhamun has lion legs as the legs of the throne and a lion head at the front. In this case, the king sits on a throne depicted as a lion, an emblem of the king's power. The lion as the king or the king as the lion wasn't just an Egyptian motif. This lion paw from Cyprus, also from the foot of a chair, points to a wide-ranging custom of lions on thrones beyond Egypt. We see the king as lion association in other places too. This Assyrian relief shows a scene which took place after a battle. These people are Elamites from what is now southern Iran. You can see their hands are bound as they walk in single file in a long caravan. They are captives being led away after being defeated in battle. In the image, they are walking over a hill or a mountain, and in the corner, we see a hunting lion stalking a mountain goat. While this may just be an artistic flourish or a naturalistic addition, it should probably be taken as a metaphor. The lion is the king of Assyria, and the Elamites are the mountain goat. We know how that encounter goes in the wild, and we know from the scene above how the encounter between the Elamites and the kings of Assyria went. Whether the king is fighting the lion or shown as the lion itself, the lion had a special connection with kings in the ancient world. The ferocity and strength of the lion was either subdued by the king or was harnessed and used as a metaphor for the king. Because ancient kings were so closely connected with the gods, it's no surprise that lions also came to be associated with the gods. And we'll look at those associations next week, along with bringing all of this together to understand how the Israelites use lion imagery. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss it.
Thanks for joining us for this Beneath the Bible video. If you want to learn more about lion imagery, we've included some references and resources in the description below. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more content like it, check out these other videos that we've done on animal imagery. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Beneath the Bible, and you can support our work at ko-fi.com/beneaththebible. Finally, if you learned something new today, take a second to share this video with your friends. And until next time, keep digging.